I mean, we have a Veterans Administration. First of all, any combat veteran that comes home ought to get health care wherever they want it. Period, end of story, okay? But there was a time when that was fought because there were people who had a vested interest in and we don't want to destroy the VA hospitals or anything, but there was a time when they wanted that exclusive. You couldn't go anywhere you wanted to, and now it's starting to grow, and the people will knock the walls down on that. But think about that. Now, let's talk about the VA just for a second. The VA needs to be put in a position of where it is decentralized. It needs to be shrunk so that it's spread out, and at the same time it's responsive. Do you know that somebody told me the other day, this is a really interesting guy. You know him from TV and you'll chuckle. But Montel Williams went to the Naval Academy. He's an unbelievable guy. You know that the suicide rate among veterans is high. It takes 2 days for them to get, I mean, this is insane, okay? So we need to get somebody in and restructure the entire VA to make it more responsible, okay? But, thank you. It's very, very nice of you to give me this phone. Here's the thing. It wasn't as modern one as I wanted. So, sir, here's how I do budgets as the governor. And by the way, when I was governor, we were $8 billion in the hole. Now we're $2 billion in the black. We've cut taxes by $5 billion. Which reminds me of something. Okay. I go to Washington, I fight for 10 years to balance a budget because I know if the debt goes up, the jobs go down. We get to a balanced budget, we run a surplus, we cut taxes, pay down $500 billion of the national debt. Hold on, I become governor, we're $8 billion in the hole, now we're $2 billion in the black. We had lost 350,000 jobs, we're up 417,000. We cut taxes by more than any governor in the entire country. Our credit is rock solid, and we've left nobody behind. The mentally ill, the drug addicted, or the working poor. Now, I tell you that not because I'm such a great guy. I tell you that because, you see, I'm a voter. And when somebody running for office comes to see me and they say, I want you to vote for me, I say, well, what are you going to do? And they tell me, I say, why would I even believe you? What have you ever done in your life? So I think the ability to fix problems is going to count before all is said and done. But let me go back to how I run the state. I tell all of my cabinet members, I want you to come in and submit a budget to me that represents 90% of what you spent last year. I want a budget at 90%, I want a budget at 85%, and I want a budget that's flat. If you try to game me, you will only try it once. Now, I don't have to tell them that anymore, because they know. And so they come in with all kinds of ideas for change. For example, we privatized one of our prisons because it made sense. Now, our prisons, it's not 90%, and it's not 95%, and it's not flat. We got to put more money in it. And so we do that. But our recidivism rate is about half the national average because of the kind of reform that this guy does. Now, I'll talk to you about a couple of programs. Medicaid. We cut Medicaid, the growth of Medicaid, from 10.5 to 2.5. And you know the single biggest thing we did, sir? We broke the back of the nursing home lobby, which had some of the highest reimbursement rates, took up all the resources so mom and dad couldn't stay in their own home. So I won this battle. So now one of the biggest changes we've made in Medicaid is if mom and dad want to stay in their own home, rather than go into a nursing home, they're able to do it because they now have the resources to stay there at a lower price. Now, how's that sound? Yeah, good. Now, if you're on Medicare, you buy a supplemental policy, you get first dollar coverage. Nobody should get first dollar coverage. That encourages overutilization, will bankrupt the system. So have a little deductible when it comes to to your supplemental Medicare policy. Is that some draconian thing? No, it's not. Let's take another example. Let's take Social Security. I'm going to get to you. I'm just giving them some examples here because I don't want them to think Let me give you an example. Anybody here successful, made money in their life? Did? Okay, so you made money in your life, okay? So if you've made a good chunk of money throughout your lifetime, you're still going to get Social Security, but you're not going to get what you thought you were going to get, although you probably never even thought about what you were going to get. But you're going to still get it. It will be less. So that the lady who's working at the lunch counter, who depends on it, is going to get what she needs. That's what we're going to do. Now, I don't think that's not so draconian. It's what we have to do. So part of the key to the future of government is to innovate, think of it in a better way, have no limits on the way in which you can change it, and get your mind into the 21st century. Now, one of my friends told me the other day, John Kasich, you're actually a millennial in an older body. That's a good one. Put that down. And it's because it's true. So anyway, sir, we can get there. Economic growth, restraining government, that's how you get to a balanced budget. Yes, sir, right here.
Fifth generation Buckeye, 36 years as a senior intelligence officer serving this country in the Department of Defense. I'm very worried that the President of the United States does not receive unbiased intelligence information, and I'm very concerned about what I perceive to be the greatest threat to this country, which is the caliphate, ISIS. My question, sir, is how are you going to ensure that you get unbiased, all-source intel, not just some PDB briefer coming up from Langley? And secondly, how do you plan to deal with the ISIS threat whose sole goal is to rule the world?
Well, first of all, I want to start before we get to the issue of ISIS. I am going to bring every single former James Bond in every day. No, I'm just kidding you. Let me tell you, sir, I served on the Armed Services Committee for 18 years. And I learned something about the military, intelligence, everything else. The way that I believe you need to do it is you have to bring your traditional intelligence folks in, but you also have to bring the person in who sort of rubs the community the wrong way with a different way of looking at things. Number two, you bring your traditional military type in, but you also bring the reformer in. There was a guy who got to be the vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He was a naval guy, and I don't know how he ever climbed up, because he was a naval guy and said, we don't need more carriers. We need to have platforms that are located in the ocean that cost a fraction where we can use it. I was fascinated by this guy. He then went to run SAIC. He's something else, okay? You need to have a very significant divergence of opinion. So people say to me, okay, we're going to go to war against ISIS. How many troops are you going to send? Well, anybody running for president who answers that is not qualified to be president. The way you would determine that, is you look at your traditional military types, your untraditional intelligence types, and you get them all around the table. And the president's job at the end of the day is to measure that he or she thinks is the most effective way to do it. Because if you just get one point of view, Kennedy would have bombed Cuba, okay? So you learn over time to seek a divergence of opinion, not just on national security, but frankly everything. And that requires an innate gut that is usually right, and maybe an innate intelligence as you sort through things. Now, let's just talk about this threat. So we have ISIS, and let me just walk through this so we can do it quickly, and you don't have to clap because I know you all hate ISIS. We have to destroy them. I've been saying it forever, because there is no negotiation. They despise our way of living, and they actually believe. Think about this for a second. You've got, what do you got, eight that have been identified now, basically young men, sitting in an apartment in Brussels, talking about how they're going to go to the airport and kill everybody who's in the airport. They never met any of these people. And they believe that by killing us, by going to Dulles and killing all of us, they get a trip to paradise. Now, you know, there are not many people that think that way. We don't know the number, we don't know the percentage, but even if it's a half or a quarter of 1%, it's a sizable number. But it's not, but the world itself doesn't want to live that way. Who wants to have that going on in their community, in their families, in their neighborhoods, in their country? So I believe that the president has to turn lemons into lemonade. First of all, we need a coalition to defeat ISIS like the senior Bush put together to drive Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait. Now, that was a serious matter, but nowhere near as serious as these murderers that we're facing. So the Egyptians, the Jordanians, the Saudis, the Gulf states have to come, in Turkey. They got to come, they got to work with Europe, we've got to work, and we're going to be the leader, and we're going to go in the air and on the ground, and we're going to destroy ISIS, and when it settles down, we come home and let them sort out the map, sir. It's not for us to draw them. We tried to draw the map the last time, it didn't work. Let them figure it out. And then, you know, if I were... So think about this. And I don't want to spend a lot of time looking in the rearview mirror. But for the life of me, if I had been president of the United States, the last place you would have found me is at a baseball game with the Castros in Cuba, okay? I wouldn't have been there. So, the president should have come home. He should have gathered his intelligence and military folks, called every major world leader, and sent our people to Europe and say, let's examine all of our vulnerabilities and let's fix it. And unfortunately, as we begin to examine it, we have found that they screwed this whole thing up over there. They never processed the information. Well, you find out, a guy in Turkey calls you and says, this murderer is coming to your country, and they don't tell anybody. Okay, like, well, what do we care? The political correctness, in that case, bad, from the standpoint of we can't say anything to anybody. The inability to have many different layers of intelligence, thus turf, right? The DIA doesn't want to tell the CIA, am I right? Doesn't want to tell the FBI, and so I know about this, okay? Now, the world is not going to put up with this. So we need the best intelligence and policing worldwide with the civilized world against these barbarians. And the president's going to have to do this. Now, when countries think that we're for them and then we turn our back on them or we don't mean what we say, they're nervous, they're afraid. They're like getting, in some respects, it's like politicians getting to endorse me. Oh my God, I love you, man. I want a picture. I want an autograph. I just love you, but I can't help you, okay? You understand, right, Alan? Alan's for me. Alan's endorsed me. He's a real guy, okay? Okay? So, countries are like people. They have their self-interest, and I'll tell you what their self-interest is. Not to have their people blown up in an airport or in a shopping mall. It takes leadership out of us. And I will tell you this. These half-baked, lame-brain ideas, here's the first thing. We're going to have, if you want to come visit America, we're going to have a religious test. Okay, are you a Muslim? Oh, you're not? Okay. Prove it. Okay? I mean, we're now going to need Muslim countries. If you want to find out what's going on in a mosque, who do you think you would ask? Who would you ask? I think it'd be somebody that was like going to the mosque, right? If you want to know about radicalization in your neighborhood, who would you ask? You would ask somebody that lives in the neighborhood. you seem like a nice lady. You're not, I don't think you're going to be very effective in telling me in terms of what's happening in a mosque, right? No. So the idea that we're going to target people or we're going to surveil their neighborhoods. I mean, think about what this Republican Party now is offering. We're going to ship out 11.5 million people, and we're going to drag them out of their homes and send them to Mexico while their kids are on the porch crying. We're going to surveil neighborhoods on the basis of a religious test. We're not going to let anybody come into the country if they're not the right religion. We're going to let Russia take care of Europe. We might have used nuclear weapons in Europe or nuclear weapons in Asia. We should not even spend any time in the Middle East. We ought to impose tariffs of 45% on countries, which of course will destroy our jobs and drive down our standard of living. And, well, I mean, the list goes on and on and on. That's what we're offering. We think we're going to win. Why do you think we're going to get killed if we don't pick somebody that can win an election in the fall? I'd like to beat Hillary Clinton. So, you know what I'm saying. We need to unify the civilized world, and with Russia, let's be a little sophisticated. Putin, we're going to arm the Ukrainians, and they're going to fight for their freedom, just understand. And Putin, don't try to come and take our countries in NATO because you're going to have a war with us. That's all you need to tell them. You don't need to tell them any more than that. And we're going to tell the Chinese, you don't own the South China Sea. We're not at war with you, but you know there's a limit to what we're going to put up with. And by the way, everybody in the world should know that we're going to treat our friends better than we treat our enemies, rather than treating our enemies better than we treat our friends. Okay. I gotta get right here. Yeah, go ahead, kid. Is that the loudest you can talk? I mean, come on, man.
I gotta hold the mic. All right. Hello? All right, so we actually share an interest in sports. I actually go to the University of Maryland, so there is a little bit of a strike against you, Mr. Ohio State. But I do want to start by...
What are you taking there?
Huh? Sociology.
Good. And
Okay.
what year are you?
A senior.
Great. Well, you
Yes,
got a
sir.
job yet?
Not yet.
Okay. See this guy right
I
here?
demand a meeting with you.
Go meet with him. Okay? Okay.
So I want to thank you because recently I was reading that you actually have supported making the day after the Super Bowl a national holiday.
I have. Yes. It's true.
But my question is this. About a month ago, you were endorsed by Urban Meyer, the head coach of Ohio's football team.
Yeah.
And you know, one of the things that has kind of perplexed me and I would like to get your thoughts on is, you know, he gets paid $6.5 million a year. Ohio State's football program...
Underpaid, clearly.
Right,
yeah.
right. Ohio State's football program generates $51 million in profits on an annual basis, and yet the players don't receive wages. Why is that? And do you think that players should be paid in these sorts of profitable sorts of
That's a good question.
teams? And then my second
Yeah.
question is along those lines. He's a state employee, and you know, like my dad, he actually works for the federal government. And you know, federal employees, because of the Hatch Act, are not really allowed to engage in politics in certain ways. Would you support repealing the Hatch Act so that, you know, First Amendment rights of federal government employees are more protected?
That's an interesting
Because we're in
point.
D.C. and Maryland, and, you know, it's a lot of federal employees out here. And they feel like they can't.
It depends if their political activity was going to help me or not. I mean, let's face fact. No, let me answer. I don't know. I'd have to think about the Hatch Act, okay? I don't know that Urban Meyer is actually a state employee. I don't really know what it is. But here's what I would tell you. Do I think that these folks ought to be making $5, $6, $7 million? No, I really don't think so. Okay, I think it's really a lot of money. But let me tell you all I know about the program. The football program supports all other sports programs at Ohio State, including a lot of the programs that probably wouldn't be funded in the area of the women athletes. So the program sort of pays for itself. And I would say that when it comes to the coach of Ohio State or the coach of Alabama or any of these big schools, it's a competition. for somebody that can come and win. Let me tell you, if he doesn't win, he'll have the job for like a day, okay? And so, you know, but does it seem as though it fits to somebody who's doing health research at Ohio State? No, okay, I mean, there's a lot of disparity. Our most underpaid people in the country are teachers, in my opinion. And so I think it's a really interesting question. I mean, I like Urban Meyer. He's been very successful. He has high standards for the students, but that program does pay for itself. So that's the best, and if they feel that within the context of that program they need to pay that to get somebody, and then that's great. And I think you ought to be considering becoming, paying the players. You know, I don't know. I got so many things to think about. Like, this is not at the top of my list, you know. I do read about it. Look, I think the one thing is we don't want to play a game. Like they're out there doing this stuff and we look the other way and you've got boosters and all of that. We could probably maybe do a little bit better for them. But, I mean, look, I got to tell you, the guy that I knew, who I loved, was Woody Hayes. And let me tell you about Woody, because you think about Woody, you think about the end of his career. And that's not who he was. He took no shoe contracts, no shirt contracts. Hollywood wanted to make a movie of his life, and he wouldn't do it. And his players would, the only thing he got when he retired, his players bought him a pickup truck. And I loved Woody. And he was, you know, he went and served the troops and all this other stuff. But I want to tell you a great story about Woody, because he was a different sort. I read in the paper that they were going to build a monument to one of my great heroes, Jesse Owens. And I want to see that movie Race. I have not seen it yet, but it's on my list to go, top of the list. So I read they're going to do this memorial for Jesse Owens. And I go to this thing. I think there's going to be 1,000 people there, but it was raining, and there weren't many there. There was the president of the university, the athletic director, Coach Hayes, Mrs. Owens, and the whole family. So I'm standing there, we're kind of huddled, and there's Mrs. Owens and the coach. I said, so Coach, Jesse Owens, greatest athlete you ever saw, huh? Here's Mrs. Owens. Oh no, Paul Warfield. No, that was a great athlete, not Jesse Owens. So young man, are you playing any sports at Maryland? I tell you what you ought to do. You ought to do this, go to graduate school in coaching. And then call me and let me know when you get the $6 million contract. Good questions, though, something to think about. My number one deal that I'm trying to push as the governor is look, you're all going to clap, okay? Don't clap. Let me just answer this. I have brought in a task force of business people who have been unrelenting, and they're all business people who are very smart on cutting costs. And I've had them examine why these college costs are so high, and we need to get rid of these rising costs and make college more affordable before nobody can afford to go anymore, okay? That's my concern. So, this is so hard. Ma'am, right there. What is it you want? You've got a Ohio State football helmet here.
Well, I want to ask a question about immigration. That's an
Okay, I'll get to immigration. Yes.
Hi. My concern is about Baltimore and all the violence and the drugs there. And knowing the success you had in Ohio, I was wondering, as president, could you help nationally the rest of states and cities like Baltimore?
Well, look, it's a struggle for all. Cleveland, our cities are doing better, but it's a struggle. Because, well, first of all, you know what's happening. Even in Baltimore, you have more and more people moving downtown. So that's a good thing. But we've got persistent poverty. We've got schools that are not performing the way they ought to. We have relations between community and police that are obviously, I mean, here in Baltimore, they were terrible, not ideal in many places. So what do? First of all, I just saw a group of people sitting in the hotel from Pittsburgh. And they were all like teachers and guidance counselors and all that. They said, what is the most important thing we can do? I said, to me, because I got big education programs in our state, the single biggest thing we can do is get our business community, our faith-based, and our value-based organizations to adopt schools and mentor the kids and tell them what they can be in life. That's the most important thing. And I wrote a book called Courage is Contagious. And I actually came here to Baltimore to interview a woman who was really a dogged, determined reformer, African-American woman. She was a superstar. I got reminded of it this morning because I wrote the book like 20 years ago, but she was a reformer. Now, the other thing we need to do is we got to get rid of stupid rules that keep businesses from springing up, particularly small businesses. And some of the hassles that go to small businesses are driven by local government officials. Small business, anybody here in small, am I right? I mean, you got to put the right sign up. See, to me, open your business and we'll get to the paperwork later. That's the way I look at it. And then when it comes, we need a growth of small business. Frankly, we're going to need some money to knock down some of these blighted, and it's going to, I don't know, we've got to figure that money out. And the other thing I would tell you, as president, I would have done something like I've done in Ohio, and that is we brought police and community together. We've now created a statewide policy on use of deadly force, and we want the information on hiring and recruiting because we want the police to look like the community. And we're forming a collaborative so police and community can understand each other's serious problems. But I was with somebody, Alan, I don't remember who it was, and he said the biggest cause of all these problems is when people don't have work. And we have to drive, how do you get economic growth? You have common sense regulations. I would have a vice president spend their time just getting rid of all this nonsense we have. Number two, you need to have lower taxes on individuals and businesses. And basically, small businesses have to be relieved of both the regulatory burden and the tax burden. And thirdly, you need really a system of balancing budgets. When you have that, things grow. So it's the schools, it's dealing with the physical property, it's the schools with the mentoring, it's police and community understanding one another so you have law enforcement, and it's getting rid of and getting local government out of the way so you can create an environment where you can grow jobs. If you do those things, it's a good start. There's more we can do, but I think that's a very, very good start. So thanks for the question. Immigration, what do you want?
I do like it. I'm Ivan. I'm a naturalized American citizen. I came here in 2000, became an American citizen in 2000, Venezuela, the new Cuba. My question is, your immigration policy talks about sealing the borders, and I don't believe in deportation, 15 million illegal immigrants that are here now. But I do believe in a two-tier program, meaning that the first tier, if they want to stay here and be contributing members to society like they are now, they can stay and work all they want, but they can never vote. Second tier is if you want to vote, you can leave the country and start back like I did it and follow the law like I did. How do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, look, I think we have to fix the border because we can't have, it's a national security beyond you got to control your border. It's like you lock your doors at night. You don't want people just wandering in. A country shouldn't have people wandering in, number one. Number two, a guest worker program so people can come in and work and go back home. And thirdly, if you are here illegally, you pay back taxes, a fine, maybe some other things, and you have a path to legalization if you didn't commit a crime since you've been here, but never to citizenship, never to citizenship. And I think that can pass. And yeah, I'm pretty sure that Mexico will build that wall too. I mean, I have very little doubt that that would happen. Yes, they can't wait to build that wall. Yes, ma'am.
I'm not sure how much you remember from your mother, but Zdravo, Dobar dan.
Only thing I know is
Kasich.
dobra. It's the only word I know.
That's good.
Okay, good. Did you survive a brain tumor?
I did. I did. I had them. I had a craniotomy on April 21st, 2015. And
Well, that's like 1 year ago.
so you'll be back next Thursday to help me celebrate.
Wow. And
We
so
call
you're
we call
fine?
it a craniversary, is what we call it. No, we got a few things in there that shouldn't still be in there, so we're watching them. but thank you. But I'm here by the grace of God, standing on my own 2 feet, and the wonderful doctors at the University of Maryland Medical Center. I wanted to ask you, compromise seems to have become a 4-letter word in this country. And what will you do in your first 100 days to bring all 3 of the branches of government together to perform respectfully, productively, and proactively?
Okay. Well, here's what, first of all, even though we need to balance a budget, I want you to know that there should be at least a doubling of the National Institutes of Health to do the research on things like Alzheimer's, dementia, ALS, pancreatic cancer, childhood cancers, okay? But the schools can't take overhead money. They need to use the dollars, the precious dollars, for research. And we did that when I was budget chairman. Newt and I and the whole party really felt it was important, and we need to do that. In terms of bringing people together, I'm going to get the phone numbers of every mother and father who has a kid in Congress, and I'm going to call Mom on her birthday, and she's going to tell her kid, you mess with that president, you're messing with me, okay? But in all seriousness, this is not that hard, but it is. There's been so much. Let me just give you an example. First, I'm going to talk about the president. President that passes executive orders and thumbs his nose at the Congress, and he passes Obamacare without one single Republican vote, okay? And that was really bad. Then we had a Republican who went to the State of the Union address, and the president is speaking, and he yells, "You lie," and put out a fundraising letter the next day to take advantage of, he's lucky I wasn't there, okay? You have to respect one another. Now, in addition to that, let me tell you how it really works, because Tom Coleman was there when it worked. People have to remember they're Americans before they're Republicans and Democrats, okay? Now, okay, a quick story, very quick story. I'm making my first State of the State address. I was an aide. I became a state senator. I leave. The next thing you know, I'm the governor of the state. I walk into the state capitol. All the lights, the people are cheering. They're high-fiving. It was great. It's great. I'm like the king. I made it, okay? In the middle of my speech, my first year, this lady jumps up and walks out on me and leads a protest against me in the Capitol. 2 months later, she wants a meeting with me. Would you give her a meeting? You wouldn't? Okay. So my staff didn't want to give her a meeting either. I said, let the lady come in. So she came in, and she was sitting across from me. And I said, what do you need? She said, well, we have a problem in Ohio of human trafficking. And I said, well, I know we have a worldwide problem of human trafficking, but she goes, no, we have one here. We have like 1,000, I don't remember the number, of young people, 11, 12, 13, who have been put into the sex trade business. I said, are you kidding me? Oh, no. I said, well, what are you doing about it? She said, well, I have this legislation. I said, how's it going? She said, I've been working on this for a few years, and it hasn't gone very well, basically. I'm paraphrasing her. I said, okay, well, if, this sounds very interesting, why don't we pass your legislation? And she's looking at me, and finally I said, hello? Are you with me? She said, you mean you would do that? I said, what, are you kidding me? So we ended up passing the legislation, and one of the key points is, if you have been human trafficked, and you have been turned into a prostitute, probably hooked on drugs, when we catch you, you are going to be a victim and not a criminal, and we are going to throw the criminal in jail, okay? My wife has become involved in this, and these people who were human trafficked, we're now getting them on their feet. We got judges now that are all because this lady came to see me. Now, if I would have not met her, and I would have said, well, look at what she did to me, you just can't burn bridge. The thing you want to do in life is, I'm going to burn a bridge. my uncle insulted me, you know, or my friend or whatever, and then the next thing you know, you got to call them. So we have to be patient with one another, and we have to realize that people have different passions, ideas. It's fine. You don't have to hate anybody. Just give them some respect, because you're going to find something that you're going to agree with them on. So you get the House, the Senate, and I got to tell you, sometimes it'll be very, very hard, because some of them are political, they're partisans. You got to work on them, and it can take calling their mother. I'm not kidding you. It's calling their daughter. It's taking them in, you know, me, I take them in the state plane, or I take them in car with me, or, I mean, some of them are tough nuts to crack. But it's like this lady told me in Baltimore. She told me this 25 years ago. I said, do you think they love their kids? She said, oh yeah, but sometimes you have to go real deep to find it. So that's all we've got to do. And you know, life is so short. It's so short. So that's what I would do, and show them respect and give them something that can make them feel good. That's all people want. Yes, young lady.
Hi, I'm a senior political science major at Howard University, and I'm from rural eastern North Carolina, Farmville to be exact. As the president, what would you do to fix the alarming rate of the rural workers in the industrial sector, agriculture and manufacture, who are losing their jobs, and how can you influence our elected officials now to invest in this workforce development that we're lacking? I ask because my grandfather was a carpenter and a painter at the Pentagon for 35 years, and that type of economic security is something that my generation fears we won't have.
Yeah. First of all, I want you to know that when I ran for re-election, I was endorsed by the carpenters. I nailed that endorsement down. I want you to know. Okay. Yeah. It's the best. I'll be here all night, playing all night long. Okay, let me just talk to you about something. First of all, and this is something that has to be done where we live. I want to send the education programs back to the states, but then I want to travel the states and talk about best practices. Here's the thing that I know. I know that right now we are not training enough of our kids for what they want to be and for the jobs that exist. We are running a school system that is operating in the last century. We need to find, and our guidance counselors are ignored. Our guidance counselors are some of the most important people in the school, because their job is to find out what it is that you think you might want to do and try to guide you to it based on the fact that here's the job, it's available, and this is what it takes to get one, and this is what it pays. We're doing that in our state. Should be done nationally. Secondly, when you go to Howard or you go to the University of Maryland, when you walk in those doors, those institutions have the responsibility of assigning somebody to you to get you the skills based on you attending that school, based on what you want to be and the available job. And I'll tell you how serious I am about this. I have told our universities and community colleges in Ohio, if you do not do this, I will not give you a dime for any capital improvement at your place. I'm not fooling around with this. I'm not going to have kids go to school for 2 or 3 years, drop out, have huge debt, and they got no skills. So we have to get education aligned with what people want to do. Now, here's the other issue we have to think about. Training is lifelong anymore. You cannot be stuck in your job. You have to constantly upgrade your skills. And we're going to have to figure out how to do it. I don't know exactly, because it costs a lot of money. We're doing it in our state. It's very expensive. But we have to constantly train people, because, first of all, they're going to still be painting in the Pentagon unless they find a paint that doesn't come off, which they might. Think about light bulbs. You know, you used to have to change light bulbs. Now you don't change light bulbs. They're there for 100 years, right? So light bulb changers, you know, what do? So we have to constantly be thinking. We have to constantly be thinking about people upgrading their skills or giving them, whether it's online, the training they need. Let me tell you one thing I want to promote. I want groups of businesses to come together and offer online training opportunities. So let's say I'm working at Wendy's, and I'm a single mom with a couple kids, and I'm not making much money. Well, I know that if I can get a job as a hospital technician, I can make a lot of money. I want the hospitals to come together and put online, I can take it at a library if I'm poor, and I can complete the course, and that should guarantee me an interview for a job in a hospital. See, that's thinking in different ways. I'm not telling you I got it all figured out, but if we think bigger, and the other challenge we have is rural poverty. And that's something that we focus on urban poverty, we got to think about rural poverty, and it all gets back to jobs, and it all gets back to training. So, you know, Steph Curry is going to get paid $1 billion because you know who Steph Curry is? Give me it. Give it to me. Give it to me. You know why he's going to get paid a lot of money? Yeah, but what does he have? Skills. He's got skills, right, kiddo? If we have skills, we can't be denied decent pay, but we are not getting the skills through our education system that we need to get. So, glad you're going to Howard. What are you going to be?
Hopefully I'll work in politics with one of you all.
Oh my gosh. Right here.
Shoved my way all the way up here to ask this question. The Affordable Care Act, it has been a disaster, but unfortunately, from what I've seen with many politicians, and particularly one person you're running against, is that no matter how bad they say it is, they don't seem to understand why it's bad. I'm a member of what I like to call the sickest 1% of Americans. I have two not overly common forms of arthritis that the main drug I take is $44,000 a year. The problems that have been going on for a year, out-of-network services, drug approval, slow approval by the FDA, obviously costs, specialist coverage. All of that was a disaster before the Affordable Care Act. Since it's come into effect, all of these regulations that are supposed to prevent Medicaid abuses are just more excuses for insurance companies to deny people like me coverage. A combination of some truly amazing people have let me walk again, but a year ago I was taking Percocet every morning to walk 10 steps so I didn't pee in my own bed.
How old are you, young man?
I'm 27. I've had arthritis for almost 16 years.
What do we say to him? Huh? Huh? What do you say to him? The courage for him to come up here and walk up here, okay? Gotta go? Okay. Okay, I'm going to tell you a couple things. And we're going to have to end here because Shrimp, look, the man in black comes out, he says you have to go. Tell him how you feel about him cutting me off, huh? Yeah, thank you all, yeah. Okay, let me tell you a couple things. First of all, there has to be a way to take people who have these kinds of conditions, who are, unique. We have to be able to put you in a pool where you can get what you need so you don't spend your whole lifetime, fighting against things that are, it's tough enough to get out there and fight in the job world and all that without making it impossible for you. Number one, the best thing about Obamacare is this, and we should have done this years ago. I don't understand why we didn't do it. Nobody should be denied health insurance because they have a pre-existing condition. Nobody. And let's also realize that nobody should be bankrupted because we get sick. It shouldn't work that way. Now, here's the problem with Obamacare. It's supposed to control health care costs. It is not. It has driven insurance costs up on an average of 80%. And there are small businesses that won't grow bigger because they don't want to get caught in it. So what would I do? Well, I want to get rid of it. But you can't just take millions of Americans who now have health insurance and tell them they don't get it anymore. I was in Maine, and I was walking around in Maine, and I saw this guy, and I asked him for a restaurant, and I said, "Sir, have you lived here your whole life?" And he said, "Not yet." And, but he directed me to this restaurant, and right next door was a little craft store. And I walked in with my friend, and she's ladies looking at us. I mean, it is Maine. They want to know who you are up there. And I love Maine. So who are you guys? I said, oh, no, nobody. Just here in town. I was up seeing the governor, okay? So I said, hey, what do you think of the governor? I hate him, and all Republicans. And I said, why is that? She said, I spent my whole life trying to get health insurance, and now that I have it, the Republicans are trying to take it away. So, number one, we should take some of the federal resources and combine it with Medicaid at the state level to make sure that the working poor can still have their health insurance. But that's not good enough, okay? That's not good enough. The ultimate answer is, and she has got a great story from the University of Maryland. Let me see if there's no signs here. Okay, how do I describe it? Perfect. Let me slide through here. So we really don't know anything about our hospitals. I got a hospital bill the other day from the Cleveland Clinic because I get treated for high pressure in my eyes. It's easier for me to interpret the Dead Sea Scrolls than to understand this hospital bill. Let me give you another one. You go get a knee surgery in Baltimore, and you go get a knee surgery right here, okay? Right in this place, in Savage. It's the same surgery. Yours is $5,000 more than his, but we have no idea why that is. So take your hospitals. Do you know where your hospitals rank on costs? Do you know where they rank on quality? Do you know they say now, and I'm not putting down hospitals, but they say now that like the most dangerous place to go if you don't want to get sick is go to a hospital. So there's readmission rates, there's infection rates, there's medical mistakes, and we don't really know. We also don't know how our physicians are doing. We don't know who's really providing the quality at lower prices. So in our state, which we want to take nationally, we are going to provide total transparency. We're going to know how a hospital, what they cost, and we're going to know what their quality is. And we're going to put them on a chart. And we're beginning to do the same thing for our primary care doctors. So here's what I wanted to show you. We knew in Ohio, for example, there were hospitals. This is the ones, just take this block. There were hospitals that charged more and had high quality, and we know there were hospitals here who had high quality and lower prices. We actually could determine that just because you charge a lot doesn't mean you have high quality. And in one case, we actually sent our people to a hospital that was way out of line, and their admission policies were dumb. They changed their admission policy and brought their costs under the midpoint. Now, what we need to do is if a hospital provides us great care at a lower price, and I'm not talking about something like what this woman's gone through in terms of fighting, but I'm talking about normal stuff, because this is always going to be expensive. And if we know that the quality is high and yet the costs are low, we're going to give them a financial reward. The insurance companies will give them a financial reward. If you have a primary care doctor who keeps you healthy and there's great savings, we're going to give the primary care doctor a financial reward. And by the way, today, if you have a son or a daughter who wants to be a doctor, or if any of you are here who are doctors, nobody wants to be a primary care doctor anymore because it doesn't pay anything. So now if we change the system where you will be rewarded, let me give you another one. Say you're a primary care doctor and one of your patients gets sick and they got to go see a specialist or whatever. That primary care doctor will be rewarded for guiding you through the system so you can get the care you want at a lower price. This is where I think medicine has to go, and that's exactly what I'm going to try to do. So, okay, we're having an election coming up here. If you did not like me today, don't tell anybody, okay? But if you did, look, for forever, folks, I was like the guy down in the minor leagues throwing it 95 miles an hour, but I never got to pitch because I wouldn't throw at the batter's head. All this time, I was basically shut out from, you all thought my name was Governor of Ohio, okay? For now that it is whittled down to a small group, you're finally seeing, you know, whether it's a town hall on TV, I'm going to be doing one with Chris Matthews. That's always, it's like being in a room with an alligator, okay? I'm going to tell him that. I think the town hall's tomorrow, isn't it? When is it? I don't know when it is. But we're now starting to get the word out. So, you know, look, I would really like to have your help because I'm going to tell you the last thing. We're going to an open convention. We're going to go to a convention, okay? And it's all about accumulating delegates. And the fact is that and who's going to be a delegate? Whoa, wait a minute. Are you going to be a delegate?
From Prince George's County.
Okay. I dare anybody try to push you around. Anyway, so what's going to happen is they're going to be there, and they're going to get in there, and they're going to realize who actually could be president. And secondly, they're going to try to figure out who actually can win in the fall. And we've had... So anyway, I need your help. Please give me your support. God bless you. Thanks for being with me, and I've enjoyed it.